Hey folks, this is Primetime James Thomas coming at you with another video. And I just wanted to quickly jump on here and talk about Exorcist Believer. Finally give my thoughts on Exorcist Believer. I know I'm late to the party. The movie came out in October and it's January now. But and I know it's been a little bit, but y'all know me. I have trouble on jumping on certain topics soon as it comes out, and I don't just give out content for the sake of giving content. Usually I take my time with this. But I want to talk about this because I'm a big fan of the original and I'm a big fan of the third film. And I know a lot of you want to know my thoughts on Exorcist Believer. So let's dive right into it. Okay, so first let me preface this by or preface my thoughts by saying this, because as you know, there is a lot of hyperbolic nonsense online. What a shock, right? Especially when it comes to the world of fandom, that there is a lot of hyperbole going to the extreme. So let me first say that let's say that the camp I do not fall into anymore. The camp of the viewers, the category of viewers, the group of viewers I do not fall into. And that category is the group of viewers that say things like, this is the worst movie of all time. This is the worst movie ever made. David Gordon Green is a terrible director. He should be shot. He should never touch another movie ever again as long as he lives. He should never make another horror movie as long as he lives. This is an absolute dumpster fire, a catastrophic failure, epic proportions, right? It's the worst movie ever made. Just dog shit, dog shit, dog shit. Yeah! I do not fall into that camp. Okay, and I know you're gonna say, "Ooh, James, aren't you a hypocrite? Because that's how your movie reviews used to be back in the day." Yeah, but that was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Okay, of course, when you mature, there's age, there's wisdom, maturity. You look at things differently. You watch movies differently. Yeah, if this was me 10 years ago, I would have came up here and said, fuck this movie, fuck this movie, fuck this movie. Not anymore. I can if I still want to. I can if I want to. I just don't. I try not to do that anymore. Now, I don't think this movie, Exorcist Believer, is the worst Exorcist movie ever made. However, the camp that I do fall into, the group of viewers I do agree with, well, I tend to agree with those that have watched the movie and say, listen, it's fine. It's fine. It's not great. It's not. It's fine. What I'm saying is, I agree with those that say that. I agree when they say that the first half of the movie, the first 30, 40 minutes whatsoever, is really good. Right up until when the girls are discovered alive. Right from there on forward is when it hits. The trajectory goes down into a pretty pedestrian paint by numbers territory when it comes to the demon possession movies. But up until that point, I'm not saying it's brilliant. I'm just saying up until that point, I was actually locked in. I was dialed in. You had me there. There was a lot of mood, a lot of atmosphere, a lot of mystique, eeriness, tension building, slow burn, character development. I was in. I love the mystery. The girls going missing. I really liked that. I thought the performances and the back and forth seemed very natural. I liked the casting. It felt genuine. The relationship between everybody, it felt authentic. It felt real. So I was dialed in. I was liking the first 30 minutes. And of course, it gets to the girls being discovered. And like I said, we fall into a nosedive into a paint by numbers demon possession movie. And it almost feels like, you have this demon possession manifesto, we have to, you have to make sure you get this box, hit this checkpoint, hit this checkpoint, hit this checkpoint, the demon face behind the actor when he doesn't look, the demon, the girl contorting her body and yada, yada, yada. The same shit we've seen in 500 other movies before this. That's what it kind of felt like to me once the girls were discovered. It's creepy, it works, but we've seen it so many times. There was those tropes, and well, we didn't see the contortion in the movie, but thank God. But it's creepy, but it's so overused in that subgenre. So it kind of felt like we were moving to that territory. Now, that doesn't mean it was bad. It was competently made. The special effects are great. The makeup effects were great. Shout out to Christopher Nelson. Did a great job. The little girls were fantastic. If they ever decide to stay in this business, They have a bright future. They're really good. I thought the performance of the girls was really good. In terms of the tropes paint by numbers sort of demon possession manifesto, um, it kind of fell into that and it was disappointing. And it's not a bad movie. It's just, when you have, when you're doing a sequel to arguably not to one of the greatest horror movies of all time, but one of the greatest movies ever made, one of the greatest movies ever made, The Exorcist, is one of those horror movies that crosses the threshold of its own genre. It's into pop culture. One of the greatest films in the history of cinema. And so when you reach that level, it's not a regular horror movie that stays in its lane. It's one of the greatest films ever made. It was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. The first horror movie to ever be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. So there's a far more. It's a character-driven film rather than a plot-driven film. There's so much meat to the bone. There's so much more to The Exorcist in terms of, cinematic language and symbolism and the character development, and it's just a brilliant story and brilliant film, and it's creepy. You know what I mean? It's got a lot going for it, but it's not just it's not creepy because of 360 head terms and your mother sucks cocks in hell and fuck me. All that stuff is great. Yes. Sure, it's brilliant, but there's more to it. And The Exorcist believer has wisp of that, but it doesn't quite go there because of the era that we're in now in film. I don't necessarily think that Blumhouse and Universal were the right fit for The Exorcist, but we'll get to that in a second. So, the first 30 minutes was really good, and then we fall into the paint by numbers sort of area. I will say this though, when the girls go off into the woods, this is just a thing that I would have actually liked to have seen, or maybe even not seen. I don't think we should have shown what they were doing in the woods. I mean, I know it doesn't ruin anything, but we see them going into the woods. They're kind of trying to contact the spirits, and she wants to talk to her mother. Oh, that's cute. That doesn't ruin anything. But I do think it would have been cool if maybe we know what they're doing. Maybe we don't. I don't know. But if we see them walk into the woods, and and the wind is blowing and the leaves, rustling, and they're giggling like cute little 13-year-old girls, and then they just disappear, and we don't know what the fuck is going on. Like, I probably would have liked that angle a little bit, but nonetheless, that's just the thing I noticed. I was very disappointed we didn't hear Tubular Bells as well. Now, there were a wisp of it when Leslie Odom Jr., I believe the actor's name is, I forgot his name in the movie, when he was, basically preparing to go meet and find Chris McNeil and drive to go see her, we almost heard it. I was like, cool, okay. It was almost kind of like a remix version of it, but we never hear it. We only hear it till the very end. In the end credits, it cuts to black, and then it begins to play, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but I want to hear it throughout the movie. I wanted to hear it in the movie, in the narrative, and it never did. I was kind of like, it was very disappointing we didn't get that iconic theme at all in the movie. It's just something that I noticed. You need to play that thing in that fucking movie, and it absolutely should have been played. If anywhere during his trip to go meet Chris McNeil, at least then. And then she comes into the window and it begins to play, it's like, oh yeah, but hey, what could have been, right? Chris McNeil's Ellen Burstyn, I did feel that her character was done dirty. I feel that if you're going to, I don't know, it felt a little disrespectful to have to stab her eyes out with the cross. Now, I love the creative choice to use a crucifix to do the stabbing, because that's evil shit. But it just felt like they wanted to do something that would shock the audience to a legacy character, to communicate to the audience that nobody's safe. So imagine if we stab Chris McNeil, Ellen Burstyn in the eyes of the crucifix. Oh my gosh, she's blinded. That's crazy. That's crazy on paper. Yes, I agree, but it's just, I didn't feel it was earned. It felt a little bit, it felt rushed. I think we needed more with her. I needed to know more. And it felt like we didn't. And I really didn't like what they did with her sometimes. Her complaining her complaining about, how she wasn't there to see the excess of her daughter Reagan because, well, it's because of the patriarchy and all that stuff. And I'm just like, wow, so Ellen, do you mean tell me that Chris McNeil would be that disrespectful to the memory of the two priests that sacrificed their lives to save little Reagan? She's gonna be disrespectful because it was just the patriarchy. I'm just like, what? Really? And back to the whole crucifixion, her getting stabbed in the eyes. I felt if you're just gonna do that, just kill her. You can't just kill her. It has to be properly motivated. I often say that, but it's not that legacy characters die, but it's how they die. And I don't know if there was ever an opportunity, even in that scene, for it to be justified, but it just felt a little disrespectful to her character, and it was a little strange. They just throw her into the hospital, and then look. I just felt it was a waste of Christmas of Ellen Burstyn, in my opinion. People cannot have their cake and eat it too, but she was fine, but I wasn't crazy on it. The Linda Blair cameo at the end, yeah, I don't even know what the point of that was. I know the storyline that Chris McNeil wrote a book about Reagan's experiences, and it caused tension between the two, and they split apart, and they haven't been talking for like 50 years. And then her hearing this is what brought her back. Okay, that adds a little bit more context, but I thought it was just underwhelming overall. Maybe Linda Blair, because I did hear Linda Blair was going to be in the movie somewhat. Maybe she's going to be the bridge between believer and deceiver. Maybe we'll see Linda Blair more in the second film, if there will be a second film. But I just thought the saving that for the cameo was just it's cute. It's cute, but I just felt overall underwhelmed, with their whole subplot, and just bring her in at the very ending. Well, just it's whatever. But yeah, I thought it was kind of disrespectful to both Chris McNeil and Reagan. So just give me a second, sorry. But yeah, I don't understand that. Other than that, it's just hey, isn't this cool? Yeah, it is. But if you're not going to extend into the sequel, that's not going to affect the rest of the movie. I don't understand. I don't understand why you bring her in now. I feel like I don't know. There's a lot of things I don't know. I mean, who knows what the contract was when she wanted to do it or not? Or she said, "Listen, I'll come back. I'll only do this." Who knows? There's a lot of variables, but we don't know. But it felt like it was. We can't just leave this little thread of Chris McNeil in the hospital blind hanging around, because people are going to be like, what the hell happened to Chris McNeil? So I got an idea. Why don't we have Linda Blair come in as Reagan and then that little story be wrapped up or something? Or I don't know. It was just really weird. So I feel a little weird about the cameo. But yeah, look, I mean, overall, I don't think it's a bad film. But that The Exorcist is a movie that surpasses its own genre, and it's a real film, and there's a lot of layers to that movie. When you're going to do a sequel to The Exorcist, arguably one of the greatest movies of all time, if definitely one of the greatest horror films, there's a level of maturity and a real sort of maturity to the script, and layers to the script and to the characters and to the how it's drawn out and the pacing that needs to be there. You're not just making another demon possession movie. And I think the spirit was there. But when I listen to David Gordon Green talk in interviews, I want to make a psychological movie that's more about like he's saying all the right things, and you get to see that his heart's in the right place. It exists, especially in that first 30 minutes or so, but it just feels like a Blumhouse movie after that, and I don't think that's a good thing. Blumhouse, as I think I was alluding to earlier, is more of a popular kind of production. Pomp and circumstance. They throw everything in the kitchen sink at the wall, and that's including and they including the kitchen sink. And they just see what sticks. And Blumhouse makes great horror films, but there are 10 that's not so good. So, but because Jason Blum and Blumhouse overall is more of a has that mass produced kind of get out as much as we can, and so there's good with that, but you get a lot of horror movies that way. And I know that Jason Blum tends to hire first time directors, and he tends to give them a chance, and he tends to give a lot of creative freedom to his filmmakers, which is really good, and that's really cool. The filmmakers would no doubt really like that and appreciate that, but there's so much that they're turning out. I don't think that Blumhouse and Universal were the right fit. And then you could ask, well, what would be the right fit? I automatically think of A24. I know it's a cool thing to say. Maybe A24, I don't know, but A24 just seems like it'd be the right fit for an Exorcist film. Maybe because they tend to focus more on more mature scripts, grounded themes, fleshing out and adding layers to the characters, the psychological, the cinematic language. I'm not saying every movie they do is great, but when you watch their horror movies, they tend to thematically be more mature and grounded, and not so, pompous pomp and circumstances, heavily produced type of movies. And when you have an Exorcist sequel, I'm not saying it'll be a great movie, but I think in terms of feeling, look, it started out that way. Like there's this weird dichotomy, because I said the first 30 minutes kind of feels that way, and then it just feels like a Blumhouse movie. It needed to be more than that. Than it needed more than that, and I was just disappointed to see that. But if it didn't have Exorcist in the title, it's just I don't know. If it didn't have Exorcist, it's just a fine, serviceable possession thriller. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's a terrible movie, but it all depends on what your expectations were. There are a lot of expectations around this. When we go back to 1973, when The Exorcist came out, it was a different world. It was a different time. You hear me say it many, many times. It was a different world. It was a much more naive world. It was a much more religious world. The access to information wasn't as available as it is now. There was no internet, no social media. So we got a lot more information now, pretty much all the information you got was 6 o'clock news in the newspaper back then. They trusted their media outlets. They trusted their news. Reporters, were more credible back then. The world was more naive. It was more easy to manipulate. People were not exposed to visually disturbing things like we are today. So when Exorcist came out, it was terrifying. I mean, absolutely terrifying, and on many different levels. And now we're so desensitized, that a sequel to The Exorcist, and for Blumhouse to take it, I think it was doomed to fail. And from the very beginning. And in terms of what it needed to be, ultimately be from top to bottom, A to Z, in the hands of Blumhouse. Blumhouse they're not a terrible production company. They make good movies. They just make highly produced horror films that appeals to the masses, and rightfully so. I get it. They specialize in spending 10 million and making 80 million. You know what I mean? But with the direct sequel to The Exorcist, one of the greatest films of all time, I think they need to be maybe in a different hands. Maybe that's also including David Gordon Green. Maybe that's including David Gordon Green, Danny McBride, Scott Teems. I mean, who knows? I don't know. I don't know what sort of, leashes that they had, but what sort of red tape that they had to go through in terms of this movie. But it's not a terrible movie by any stretch of imagination, but it's certainly not what we all hoped a sequel to one of the greatest movies in history of cinema would be. And I think it's very difficult to produce an Exorcist level sequel today with highly populous production company like Blumhouse. It just wasn't the right marriage. So those are my thoughts on The Exorcist Believer. And there's some good things in there. Some things I like, some things that were kind of cool, and there are some things I'm like, here we go. We're back to this again. My takeaways are that the first 30 minutes are really good. The girls are fantastic. The makeup effects is great. There are some moments of oh, okay, all right, I like that. Little twist in there. You know, but I don't know, it just felt like every other demon possession film that's been coming out for the past 20 years. Um, like I could go on and on about it, but there were a lot of things that felt unfinished, not fleshed out, and the spirit was there. I could feel the spirit, but I just think it just needed to be something a little different. Overall. So yeah, so I want to take more time. I could possibly get a bit more time, but I could really dive deep into it. But I have to watch the movie a few more times to kind of get my overall feelings. But those are my feelings after my first watch. Um, but yeah. Let me know, guys. Let me know your guys' thoughts on Exorcist Believer. Did you guys enjoy it? Did you guys think it's a great movie? Did you guys think it sucked? Do you guys think it's the worst movie ever made? Let me know your guys' thoughts. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Don't forget to check out me and Paul's Primetime Gorehound episode on Halloween Resurrection. And Sunday night, the beginning of February, will be the return of the Black History Month movie reviews with me and Quez, where me and Quez will be reviewing the first movie we'll be reviewing will be Boys in the Hood. Boys in the Hood. We already got the lineup down. It should be another great month of movie reviews with Quez and possibly Mark. But yeah, hit that like, subscribe button. Let me know your guys' thoughts on Exorcist Believer. How'd you guys feel about the film? And I'm just gonna go ahead into there. Everyone have yourselves a great day, and I am out. Peace.